So put up for Chrissy and put up for our band guys as they take their seat as well. I'm going to preach tonight. And because of all the delays and the ins and outs of this church, we currently are actually still in the middle of our Made for More series, which feels like it's been going on for 4 months now. And by the time we're done, it's going to feel like 6. So I'm excited to preach part 6 tonight. But I have subtitled this Made for More part, Dealing with Disappointment. And when I was writing this, I asked myself the question, God, surely I'm not the only one that deals with disappointment. Surely I'm not the only one that feels disappointed when I'm like made for more and the church is encouraging and we're out there trying to change the world and we're out there trying to be what we're all called to be. But disappointment just seems to always knock on my front door as your pastor. And I'm assuming tonight, if you're bold enough to raise your hand, who else experiences disappointment in their life? You know, I was just like, man, it must be all of us. And I read this interesting quote the other day that said, disappointment only happens when the things we depend on to make us feel like we matter let us down. And I don't know about you, but at the moment, I'm trying to re-anchor what makes me feel like I matter. You know, a lot of times I've just anchored it in the wrong things and, you know, I've been disappointed. And I feel like every other thing I've tried but Jesus leaves me disappointed. And I don't want to just gatekeep that or keep that a secret tonight if you're first time in the house or you've been here a million times. The reality is anything in this world will let you down and will disappoint you if you get close enough to it. And so I'm trying to re-anchor this. I'm like coming out of a season of rest. I'm trying to re-anchor this. I'm trying to realize that my identity isn't in my religion. My identity is not in my routine. My identity is not found in the position I hold. My identity is not even found in my current health. It's not even found in my wealth. In fact, my identity is not even found in the relationships I have. My identity is not found in the people around me. It's not found in whether I've been noticed or not. It's not found in whether I'm liked or not. The reality is my identity should be in Jesus Christ. And if you've turned up looking for something or you're currently disappointed, you have to re-anchor what is in your life that is you're depending on. You know, every time I've anchored myself to something else, I've found myself really disappointed. And I'm trying to as your pastor, I'm trying to re-anchor my identity, my purpose, my belief system, everything I am in Jesus again. And so, although I know it's the goal, and I know that makes us all feel kind of good, the reality is we're still human and we still all struggle with disappointment. Am I right? Yeah. So do you know this? This is a fun fact. I'm going to read you this passage and then we're going to go on to the preach. But you know people that even knew Jesus personally, like they actually seen him, like, hey, Jesus, right here, standing in front of you, like I'm standing in front of you and you're standing in front of me, actually knew him, came across disappointment. And even those that knew Jesus personally had felt disappointed from Jesus himself. Can you believe that? Like we're like here and we're like 2025, we've got faith and we're trying not to be disappointed and people let us down, church let us down, relationships let us down. But there's people that actually knew Jesus. Like he's standing right there and disappointment creeped into their lives. In fact, some of them were even disappointed with Jesus himself. So let me just get into that and I'll give you some context and we'll get into that. But for context, the story I want to read tonight, it's a famous verse in John 11:17. And basically it talks about the story of 3 people named Martha, Mary, and their brother Lazarus. Now these guys were described as close friends of Jesus. And had become close friends because the one in the Bible, they had invited Jesus into their home. Now, just for context so everyone knows what kind of relationship's going on here with Jesus, this was a special relationship because unlike other encounters, Martha and Mary and Lazarus weren't some story about sin conversion or they got a miracle and it was all like used as an example like some of the other guys and the characters that encountered Jesus. Jesus actually became really good friends with them. And so it was more than just an example, it was actually a friendship. And so on this journey, on this story, Jesus was out of town and they'd found out that Lazarus, which is the brother of Martha and Mary, he had actually passed away. And so we're going to pick up the story and we're going to follow on there. So, you with me? Cool. So in John 11:17 it says here, on his arrival, Jesus found that Lazarus had already been dead or been in the tomb for 4 days. And now I love how the Bible adds that, because it's not like it was recent. It wasn't like it was, bam, Jesus showed up. It wasn't like, wow, here we go, it's happened and he showed up. There's 4 days while this guy was gone, dead, in the tomb. And many Jews had come to Martha and Mary to comfort them in their loss of their brother. And when Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him, but Mary stayed at home. And verse 21, remember, these are the good friends. These are not just like us. We got faith in Jesus. We can't see Jesus, but we know we can feel Jesus. All this stuff that we got going on in our lives of disappointment. These guys can see Jesus. And in verse 21, this is what Martha says to Jesus when he turns up. She says, Lord, Martha said to Jesus, if you had been here, if you had stuck around, if you were here, my brother would not have died. Now, you're probably starting to look at your own disappointments in your life. You're starting to feel like your own things that have let you down. And here we have people that are friends with Jesus, people that know Jesus is coming, know Jesus is right there in front of them, and they say to him, if you hadn't left, if you stuck around, if you didn't leave us alone, then my brother would not have died. Now, I just want to pause there for a second, because I'm starting to realize that disappointment can reach, find, and get into all of our hearts. It's not like it's he's good at what he does. And no, disappointment can creep into all aspects of our lives. And so I've got one point tonight. It's my only point. And this is what I'm learning. We're in the middle of Made for More. And Made for More is important. And you've heard us preaching about it, and I know we can hear it, we know it, and it's cool. It sounds exciting. We know when the preacher's like, made for more, and everyone's like, yeah, made for more. But you don't know what's the destroyer of being made for more? Do you know what wipes people out from believing the call of God on their lives? You know what makes people stop being part of what God's doing? It's actually disappointment. Maybe you haven't identified that before. Disappointment becomes the destruction of our destiny. You ever felt disappointed? I know I have. I know I will. I speak to people all the time. I go out on coffee dates. I do stuff with people that. And most people, if not all people, are disappointed with something in their lives. You know, the other day I won't name this multi-trillion-dollar company, but you might be able to figure it out because there's only 2 of them. But I was in a shopping grocery store the other day, and I was doing my thing. I was getting stuff, and I was packing my basket, and I'm doing my shopping, and all of a sudden I come to the self-checkout, and I'm like kind of having a good day. I'm like, look at me go. You know, it's coming towards the end of the week, and you know, church is back on Sunday, and we had some time off, and I'm feeling myself, I'm feeling excited, I'm packing my bags, I'm doing my thing, and I get to the self-checkout, and right in front of me is just a group of the employees and a security guard, and a lady standing in the middle of them. And I remember locking eyes with the situation and seeing this lady. She looked like life had really got to her. Like, she looked down and out. She looked like she was exhausted. She looked like her soul was wounded. She had like dark circles under her eyes. She just looked like she had been through life. And these 3 employees were standing around her and the security guard, and they're all just shaking their head at her, and they're all looking at her. And sometimes, I don't know if anyone else does this, even though I'm a believer and I love God, I'm kind of like, well, I better mind my own business in this one. And so I kind of walked around, and that's not my problem, and I walked to the self-checkout, and I'm doing my thing, and all of a sudden I hear the Holy Spirit say something to me. He says, you are going to intervene. And I was like, good one, God. You haven't noticed the security guard's already there. They don't need any more muscles. Like, it's good. And I was like in the self-serve, and I hear God say, you're going to interject. Now, this is against my personality. This is against what I want to do. This is not like I live for this stuff and I crave this stuff, like getting involved with conflicts, and I wake up every day like, I can't wait to get involved. Like, I literally am like head down, bum up. That's my personality. I'm just trying to get out of there. And God goes, I want you to interject yourself. And so I go to kind of step this way and walk towards the commotion, and another employee stood in front of me and said, hey, buddy, the exit's that way. You're going the wrong way, buddy, so just come this way, and ushered me out. And I went out to the outside of the self-serve, and I remember just going, well, that's the answer. I'm out of here. I'm going home now. And I started walking, and I just remember hearing God say, you're going to go and interject.
Yes, he would. So
And so I sit down on the chair, and I'm looking at the self-serve, and I'm looking at it, and this lady's she just looks exhausted, and the security guard and the employees are just standing over, and I watch people come through the self-checkout, and they look at the situation, and they just kind of shake their heads. They're just like, and I was just watching it, and I'm trying to build up the courage. I'm like, I'm going to go say something. I don't know what God's wanting me to do, but I'm going to interject. Anyway, I finally got the courage, and it had been a while, and I walked over there, and I said, hey, to the manager of the store, I said, hey, I don't mean to stick my nose into interject. I said, what's going on here? And she goes, this lady refuses to pay for her stuff. And I said, what stuff? And I looked down, and it was just like it wasn't like a TV, a flat screen TV or anything like that. It was just like bread, milk. It was like just the essentials. And I said to the manager, I said, let me pick up the tab. Let me just pay. And don't clap yet, because it's a sad story. The manager looks at me and says, no, it's too late. And I said, no, please, just let me. She's exhausted. No. And the manager said, no, we are so sick of people stealing from us. We are so sick of people causing this commotion and stealing stuff. We are going to make an example of her, and we're already going to call the cops. And I said, just let me pay the bill. Just wipe the tab. It's like $8. It's not even that big. Just let me take care of it. And the lady said, no, you're starting to annoy me now. Please get out of this situation. And I remember watching, and as I walked off, and the security guard grabbed her belongings and grabbed her and started dragging her towards the front door. And I went down to my car, and I sat in the car, and I got really emotional about it. And I'm like, God, what's up, man? You told me to go do that, and the outcome, I was thought maybe the whole shopping center would have erupted and clapped, and whoa, he saved the day, I don't know what I envisioned in my human little puny brain, but this wasn't the outcome I thought. And so I'm sitting in the car, and I'm confused that God asked me to do something, yet it just ended up bad. And so I'm sitting in my car, I'm hanging on to the steering wheel, and I remember feeling these words leave my heart, because I had to really work myself up to do this. And I hear these words say, I will never do that again. I will never, ever do that again. And I realized in that moment that if knowing you are made for more is the drive, then disappointment is the destruction. Disappointment is what stops us from pursuing what God has for us. It's the thing that reminds us why we stop serving, giving, exploring, looking, searching, coming to church. Disappointment is the destruction of our made for more. And I said, I'm never going to do that again. And it made me realize, and I had a moment with God, and I want to give you an example as it's not to judge, it's just to highlight, because I love you, and I'm sure you love me, and we're in this together, and Heart House is trying to push the boundaries of what it means to be a Christ follower. But disappointment stops us from helping again. You ever felt like you helped someone, or you helped somewhere, and you didn't get the recognition that you thought, or the thanks you deserved? And so you get disappointed, and you start to say, I'll never do that again. You ever realize disappointment actually stops you and I and the church from dreaming? You ever dreamed or had a God dream? And it's big, and you're like, man, we're going to see breakthrough with this thing. It's exciting. It's vision. This is all going to happen. This is really good news. And then we don't get the outcome we wanted. So it leaves us disappointed. And we start to utter the words, I'm not going to dream that again. I'm not going to believe in that again. I'm not going to see that happen again. You know, disappointment stops us from serving in the local church. Have you ever served in a local church? You felt like no one noticed, or it wasn't even making a difference? It's literally the back door of what God's trying to do with his local church. It's disappointment will always destroy the made for more in you, because it just gets in your face and reminds you that it just didn't happen. It's not happening. And disappointment starts to break that down. And you start to say things, well, I'll never do that again. You know, disappointment stops us from giving and being generous. You ever felt like you were a consistent giver or gave and you weren't feeling blessed all of a sudden and you stopped believing in it, so you just sat there disappointed? You know, disappointment stops us from forgiving people. I don't know about you, but you hang around people enough, they're going to betray you. They're going to hurt you. It's just part of whatever life, I don't know what. I wish I had answers for you, but just people hurt. And what it does is that every time we're hurt, whether it's a relative or a relationship or it's someone in the room or it's someone in the church or it's someone that's at work, we start to say, I will never go near that person again. You know, disappointment stops us from trusting God again. Have you ever felt that the prayers you prayed haven't been answered? And so you sit there in disappointment and you stop asking or praying to God, and you start to tell yourself, I'm never going to ask or do that again. And disappointment is like this weird thing that sometimes we don't want to talk about, because we want the good stuff. We want the made for more stuff. We want the we can do anything through Christ who strengthens us stuff. But you look at a story of a lady that looked in Jesus' eyes and said, if you were here, if you had stood with us, if you hadn't left us, then my brother wouldn't have died. And I know that disappointment hurts. But I want to remind someone in the room tonight that's picking up what I'm putting down. You ain't made for more because you're ever going to make it. You're made for more because He made you. And you matter. And what you do matters. And your life matters. And everything you put your hand to actually matters. We're never going to get it right. We're never going to have people always like us and not like us and have miracle stories and the lady at the shopping center. We're never going to have the outcome we want. But I do know one thing. We never made it, or we are made for more, because we make it and we do good at it. We only ever made it. And we're only ever going to be made for more because He made us. And if He made you, then He made you for more. And as I uttered these words out of my heart, I will never do that again. God reminded me. And I'm speaking to all the disappointment in the room tonight. 1 Peter 3:8. Suffering for doing good, they've called it. Made for more. What does it look like? It's not always a good story. It's not always the hero. It's not always the woo. And 1 Peter 3 says here, finally, all of you, be like-minded. Be sympathetic. Love one another. Be compassionate and humble. Do not repay evil with evil or insult with insult. But on the contrary, repay evil with blessing. Because to you, this is where you were called, so that you may inherit a blessing. For whoever would love life and see the days must keep their tongue from evil and keep their lips from deceitful speech. They must turn from evil and do good. They must seek peace and pursue it. And in verse 18, this is the drop in the hat for being made for more. For Christ also suffered once for sins, for the righteous and for the unrighteous, to bring you to God. He who was put to death in the body was made alive in spirit. Come on, friend. We ain't made for more because we made it. We're made for more because He made us. He made you. He is the reason why we do this, not for the glory, not for the applause, not for whatever we think the outcome should be, but even if the outcome's wrong and bad and didn't feel fair, we don't repay evil with evil, we don't pay hate with hate, we love and we do what we need to do. You ever feel disappointed? Let it remind you of your destiny. Not shrink it back. You ever feel disappointed? Let it remind you of your destiny. You ever feel disappointed? Let it remind you of your fresh start. I'm feeling disappointed right now, but it's going to remind me of my fresh start. The fresh start God gave me. You ever feel disappointed? Let it remind you that you needed saving and will forever need saving. So you might feel disappointed, but remind yourself, man, I was saved. You are made for more. And as the band comes, I find it interesting that sometimes the made for more we think is connected to the outcome that we want. The reality is sometimes we don't get that outcome. We don't get that things. We don't get that relationship that was meant to go the way we thought. We don't get what we want. And so disappointment starts to just divide us from the calling and the journey and the amazingness of what God has for our lives. But back to Martha. Do you know what Jesus responded to Martha when she said, if you hadn't left, if you had stayed, my brother wouldn't have died? Jesus responded to her disappointment with this. Verse 23, Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. Now, I don't know what's going on here. I don't know why Jesus was 4 days late. I'm not sure why he allowed Martha and Mary to go to that place of disappointment. But what I do know is that when he responded to her disappointment, it wasn't in correction. It wasn't in, well, have faith, man. Or it wasn't like, come on, grow up. It wasn't like, come on, do you know who I am? He just simply says to her, don't worry. He'll rise again. And I don't know about you, but sometimes we've been disappointed and we've been let down and we've tried to stay on the course of purpose and being made for more and all those wonderful things that we hear from pulpits and all that. But sometimes you're just in the reality of depression and in the reality of disappointment. And sometimes you just need to hear Jesus say, hey, it's okay. I'm going to fix this. It's okay. You're going to rise again. It's okay. There's going to be a way through this. Because I'm starting to realize the journey was never about what we can do. It was always about what he can do through us. Just think about that for a moment and pause. You can't tell stories like this without a guy being dead for 4 days. It's like the worst becomes the best because God's involved somehow. And if you stay on the course and you have faith, not just off the fuel of I'm made for more, but I'm made for more because he made me. It's not about what we can do. It's about what he can do through us. And I know this, and I know this, and I know this because guess what happened? Literally 15 minutes from when I drove down the road of that whole disappointing thing, I saw that lady going down the road. I don't know how she escaped the cops. I'm not sure how she got there. But I pulled over and I said, hey, it's me. What are you doing? She's like, going home. And I said, hey, you all good? She said, yeah, I'm fine. Do you have 50 cents? I said, I don't. She goes, okay, thanks heaps for what you did before, eh? I said, you're welcome. And then she hopped on an electric scooter. And I think she did like 120. In a school zone. And that was it. And I held onto the steering wheel again and I got emotional and I realized that despite the outcome that I had planned, I'm still made for more. And disappointment is not connected to whether God's using your life or not. It's not the indicator whether you failed or not. You think about Martha and her brother. Her baby brother's dead. Has every right to be frustrated, and God just responds, Jesus responds so gently and says, hey, he'll rise again. I got this worked out. Take your disappointment and use that to fuel your destiny. The disappointment doesn't mean you're not made for more. It actually qualifies you more to be made for more. Because you start to realize it's not in our hands, it's not what we're doing, it's not what we're trying to figure out. It's what God can do through me. I'm going to give no matter the result. I'm going to serve no matter the result. I'm going to show up to church no matter the result. I'm going to pray for healing no matter the result. I'm going to do what I've always been called to do no matter the result. Because I'm made for more. I'm going to buy groceries no matter the result. I'm going to give no matter the result. I'm going to love no matter the result. I'm going to forgive those that ripped me off no matter the result. Because I am made for more, and so are you, friend. Come on, stand with me tonight. Before we worship, I just want to pray for some disappointment in the room. And I kind of want to let you know that it's just totally okay to feel that. Like, this isn't a message of like, just get rid of it and I re-anchor myself. Like, I can imagine even the challenge of standing in front of Jesus and still feeling disappointed. So I get it if we engage in that and we find that. And I just want to pray tonight for all of us, including myself, that God tonight, just a bunch of your sons and daughters, a bunch of your kids trying to figure this out. Remind us that we are made for more. And that disappointment won't rob us, won't destroy that, won't distract us from what you've got for our lives. And when we feel disappointed, we lean more in. We press in further. We don't allow disappointment to rip us off. We don't allow disappointment to take us off the course. So those with disappointment right now, I want to remind you, you've got that fresh start. You've got that Jesus that will stand in front of you and let you be disappointed, but then will remind you that he will rise again. And whatever circumstance you found yourself, it will rise again. It will come to pass. It will go be part of the chapters of your story. And you will get through this. You will survive it. You will make it. You will have new friends. You will give again. You will love again. You will forgive again. You will feel again. In Jesus' name, amen. Come on, church, let's worship.